I was 78 years old when my body gave me the first serious warning. It was an ordinary afternoon. I was home alone, reading the newspaper, when I began to feel something strange. A buzzing in my ears, a warmth in my chest, and then, as if someone had turned on an alarm inside me, my heart started pounding hard, irregularly, as if it wanted to jump out. I got up to get some water, but I didn't make it to the kitchen. I grabbed the door frame because the world started spinning. I felt like I was going to faint. The dizziness was so strong that I had to sit down on the floor. I didn't know whether to call someone or wait for it to pass, but it didn't pass. A neighbor was the one who found me and called emergency services. They took me to the hospital. Blood pressure was extremely high. The doctor was very clear with me. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "If you don't make a real change, your heart won't survive another episode like this." He offered me pills, of course, said they were necessary. But at that moment, something inside me resisted. I didn't want to depend on a little box to keep living. I wanted to understand what my body was telling me. Why had it come to that point? What could I do to turn back? That night, lying in the hospital bed, I couldn't sleep. I thought about everything I had ignored, the meals full of salt, the stress I accumulated without speaking, the small warnings I ignored for years. I also thought about what I still had left to live, if I managed to do something different. That's when I started reading, asking, searching, and I found something that changed my story. A food. Something so simple that I doubted it at first. But I gave it a chance, and within weeks, my pressure started to respond. No pills, no side effects. I'm going to tell you exactly what it was, how I used it, and what else I did to regain my health. But first, I'd love to get to know you a little better. How old are you and which country are you watching me from? Write it in the comments. Keg. What no one explained to me about high blood pressure. For many years, I lived with a constant feeling of tiredness. I woke up in the mornings with a heavy head, as if I hadn't rested at all. Sometimes, walking down the hallway in my house, I felt short of breath. Other times, a buzzing filled my ears for no reason. But most often it was that pressure at the nape of my neck, as if something was squeezing from inside. I always thought it was normal to feel like that at 75. I thought it was simply part of getting old. I heard others say, "That's age, what can you do?" So I got used to it. I convinced myself that this was life after a certain age, slow, heavy, with the heart beating harder than it should. What no one explained to me was that this wasn't aging, this was hypertension. High blood pressure doesn't hurt, it doesn't burn, you can't see it, but it works silently, like rust that weakens a structure without you noticing. When a clear symptom finally appears, often damage has already been done, to the heart, kidneys, brain, eyes, and worst of all, sometimes that clear symptom is a heart attack or a stroke. But what really is hypertension? I'll explain it simply, like I wish someone had told me. Imagine your heart is a pump pushing blood through a hose. That hose is your arteries. If the pump pushes too hard, or if the hose is clogged or hardened, the pressure goes up. That's hypertension, when blood flows with more force than it should, slowly damaging the inside walls of your arteries. Over the years, our arteries tend to harden. It's a natural part of aging. They're no longer as elastic, no longer expand like before. This makes blood pressure increase with age, especially if we don't care for certain habits. And what habits are those? Here comes the most important part. Blood pressure rises for many reasons, many of which are in our hands. Constant stress, living worried, with your body tense, always alert. Stress makes your heart work harder than necessary. Poor diet, excess salt, processed foods, saturated fats, too much sugar. All of that causes inflammation, fluid retention, and hardens arteries. Sedentary lifestyle, the body was made to move. Without movement, blood doesn't circulate well, vessels harden, and the heart gets lazy. Lack of sleep, bad sleep, isn't just tiredness. It also affects blood pressure. The body needs rest to self-regulate. The curious thing is, many of these factors don't appear suddenly. They accumulate. A little stress today, a salty meal tomorrow, a walk you decide not to take, a bad night's sleep. And so the years go by. No one ever told me about this. No doctor, no nurse, no brochure. They gave me a pill, and that was it. But no one told me that blood pressure could also be treated from the root, that my body, if helped, could return to balance. And when I began to understand that, everything changed. I no longer saw myself as a victim of age, but as someone who could regain part of his health. Because high blood pressure, although common, is not normal. We shouldn't resign ourselves to live with it just because we are over 70. That's why today I want to share what I learned, because maybe you, like me, thought it was normal to feel this way. And maybe, like me, no one explained it to you. Today, I met someone who made me think differently. A few months after that scare, when I was already home and trying to live a bit more calmly, I started paying more attention to people around me. I was interested in knowing how others dealt with their health problems, especially those of us who had passed the 70-year mark. That's when I noticed Robert. Robert was a neighbor. He was 80 years old, only 4 years older than me, but he walked with a firm step, straight back and alert eyes. He always went out early in the morning, with his cloth cap, button-down shirt, and a cloth bag in hand. I never saw him tired, or with the grey expression I admit I had worn for years. One day, I saw him coming out of the supermarket and offered to help with his bags. We sat for a moment on a bench in the plaza, under the shade of a tree, and started talking. I asked him how he managed to stay so well. He was direct, no beating around the bush. "I don't take a single pill," he said with a calm smile. "It's all about what you eat, how you think, and how you live." At first I thought he was exaggerating. How could he not take any pills at 80? I asked if he didn't have high blood pressure or cholesterol or leg pain. He looked at me calmly. "My pressure was through the roof 20 years ago, like everyone's, but I changed course in time. I didn't resign myself. I wanted to know more. I asked him to tell me what he did. He said it was a process. He started by cutting down processed foods, moving his body more, but there was one particular food that helped him lower his pressure in just weeks. A food so simple, so common, anyone could have it at home. "I eat it every day," he said. "Sometimes steamed, sometimes raw, sometimes in juice. It didn't just help my pressure, it gave me more energy, improved digestion, and even helped me sleep better." He didn't tell me what it was right away. He asked me to first ask myself this question before seeking the easy fix. Are you willing to change what you eat every day for a little more life? Or would you rather stay the same and wait for another pill to fix it? That conversation marked me. It wasn't just what he said, but how he said it. Robert wasn't speaking from fear or pride. He spoke from experience, from having lived in his own body what many of us fear facing. That day, I went home with something new in my heart, a mix of hope and curiosity. I promised myself to investigate, read, try, and of course, talk to Robert again. I did a few days later. I sat with him in his garden while he pruned dry branches from a plant and asked him to tell me the name of that food he ate every day. He told me plainly, no mystery, no detours. "I'm not going to reveal it yet, because I want you to first understand why it works. But I promise, when we get there, you will not only know what it is, but also how to really use it to transform your health. Because what I learned from Robert wasn't just a nutritional secret. It was a new way of seeing aging, a different way to live this stage of life, not with resignation, but with action. And that, believe me, changes everything." The food that changed everything. Days after that talk with Robert, I sat with him again. This time, I had paper and pencil. I told him I was ready to know which food he said had changed his life. He looked at me, smiled, and said naturally, "Beetroot. Beetroot. That reddish root I used to see at the market and just pass by. I never liked it much, to be honest. Its earthy taste, its texture, didn't catch my attention. But when Robert started telling me what that little wonder did for his body, I began to see it differently. He explained that beetroot is rich in natural nitrates. When you consume it, those nitrates convert into nitric oxide inside the body, a substance that helps relax and widen blood vessels, facilitating circulation, and therefore lowering blood pressure. He also told me it helps the liver, improves digestion, and gives more energy because it aids oxygenation. And the best part, he added, is that it has no side effects, no prescription needed, just consistency. So I decided to try it. I went to the market that same afternoon, bought half a kilo of fresh beets, clean, their intense color still staining the vendor's hands. I got home, washed, peeled, and boiled 2 in water. That was my first serving. The next day I tried them in a salad, then in juice with carrot and apple. Some days I ate them steamed with a bit of olive oil. I started including them without fail every day, at least once. It wasn't magical or immediate, but after 10 days, I began to notice changes. My mornings were lighter. I no longer woke up with that pressure in my head. Taking my blood pressure with the device the doctor recommended, the numbers began to drop. First a little, then steadily. At 30 days, I didn't have any crisis again. No dizziness, no tachycardia, no feeling like my heart was about to burst. I went to the doctor for a checkup. He was surprised, asked what had changed. I told him everything. The beetroot, of course, but also other small decisions. He listened quietly and said something I won't forget. "Your body is responding. It just needed you to listen." Since then, beetroot hasn't been missing from my table. It's my daily medicine. I don't take pills. I eat life. I learned to prepare it many ways, some even tasty. I discovered you can roast it, grate it raw in salads, blend it with lemon and ginger. I learned even the leaf can be used in a sauté. Is it miraculous? No, but it's powerful. Because including it every day, you're not only feeding your body, you're reminding your system it can heal. It can return to balance if you give it the right tools. I know it may seem like a small change, but sometimes small is what makes the difference. I didn't do an extreme diet. I didn't become vegetarian or lock myself in an impossible routine. I just made one commitment, one concrete action, every day. And in that simple act, my body began to change its story. Science confirms it. After noticing the changes in my body, I decided to do what I hadn't done before, understand why beetroot was working. I wanted to know if it was just a coincidence, a fluke, or if there really was something bigger behind it. So I started reading. I asked my grandson to help me look for medical articles and scientific studies online. What we found left me speechless. Beetroot wasn't just a grandma's tradition or a new trend. Science had already studied it, and its benefits were well proven. One of the studies that impacted me most was done in England by a well-known university. In that study, a group of people with high blood pressure were given beetroot juice daily. In less than 2 weeks, most showed a significant reduction in their blood pressure levels, and not because of a psychological trick. They verified it with analysis, monitoring, and comparison with a group that didn't consume beetroot. The reason? As Robert had told me, beetroot is rich in natural nitrates. When consumed, these nitrates transform into a substance called nitric oxide, which relaxes blood vessels, improves blood flow, and consequently lowers pressure on the arteries. It's like the body breathing better from the inside. But that's not all. I also read that this food helps reduce inflammation, improve oxygenation of the brain and muscles, and even increase energy during the day. That's why I felt less tired. That's why I walked lighter. Beetroot wasn't just lowering my pressure, it was awakening my vitality. I remember when I told all this to my doctor. I spoke about the studies, how I took it, how I felt. He took out his notebook, checked my records and said, without irony, without sarcasm, "It's not magic. It's nature working as it should. You just let it act. That day, we talked numbers. Before adding this food, my pressure was around 160 over 100, sometimes higher. I felt bad and didn't understand why. After a month, the values dropped to 130 over 85. And not only did they drop, they stayed there. It wasn't a one-day improvement. It was something stable, real. He himself told me many patients take several medications without achieving those results. But he was also clear with me. This doesn't mean everyone can stop their medicine, but many could need less if they changed what they put on their plate. That phrase stuck with me, because it sums up a great truth. Not everything is solved with a pill, but neither is everything fixed with a vegetable. The important thing is to understand that the body has an immense capacity to recover if given the chance. Since then, every time I feel good, I don't think it was luck. I think about the decision I made, about the consistency, about that small change that brought big consequences. And that's why I'm here today, telling you this, because I know many older people live believing their only option is to accept the pill, the dizziness, the fatigue. But sometimes, the solution lies in something you can find in a market bag, something that grows underground and has the power to transform what happens inside your body. Now, 8 other keys that helped. Beetroot was the first step. It was the spark that ignited the change. But I soon understood that if I wanted lasting results, I couldn't rely on just one food. I had to treat the root of the problem, not just the surface. I had to change how I lived, thought, and breathed. That's how, little by little, I started adding 8 other practices that, along with nutrition, reinforced the improvement of my blood pressure. I didn't do them all at once. I added them one by one at my own pace, but each contributed its part. The first was better sleep. Before I went to bed late watching TV, I slept poorly, woke up several times, had trouble falling back asleep. I changed that. I started going to bed earlier, turning off screens an hour before, reading a little in bed, playing soft music. Sleeping well not only gave me more energy, it lowered my anxiety and helped stabilize my pressure. The second was something I never thought I'd do: meditate. I just closed my eyes for 10 minutes in the morning, breathed deeply, counted to 10, and let thoughts pass without getting stuck on any. At first it felt strange, but over time I discovered those 10 minutes were a gift, a rest for the mind. And when the mind rests, it stops squeezing the heart. The third was reducing salt, but without becoming fanatic. I didn't eliminate it completely because the body needs it too. What I did was avoid foods that already come with too much salt: cold cuts, instant soups, industrial bread, salty crackers. I learned to read labels. Cooking at home helped me keep control. The fourth practice was simple but powerful: walking in the morning. Not as extreme exercise, but as a moment for myself. Going out slowly, breathing fresh air, looking at trees. Sometimes 20 minutes, other times half an hour. I discovered that moving the body helps blood flow better, strengthens the heart, and regulates pressure naturally. The fifth was something that seemed silly at first: lemon water on an empty stomach. But I tried it. A glass of warm water with the juice of half a lemon each morning. I don't know if it was the digestive effect, the pH balance, or just the routine, but I felt improvements in digestion, less bloating, and a feeling of internal cleansing that lasted all day. The sixth key was increasing potassium-rich foods, which help balance sodium in the body. I started eating more bananas, spinach, avocado, pumpkin, and lentils. I didn't do it obsessively, but with awareness, knowing that what I put on my plate had a purpose beyond flavor. The seventh was cutting down processed meat: sausages, hot dogs, cold cuts, all that stayed in the past. I didn't become vegetarian, but chose better: chicken, fish, fresh meat occasionally. I learned that often it's not the meat itself, but what they do to it before it reaches your plate. And the eighth, perhaps the hardest for me, was learning to say no. No to commitments I didn't want to take. No to conversations that left me tense. No to the guilt of not being able to do it all. I reduced stress by stopping trying to please everyone, because I realized something important. Pressure also rises from inside, not only from what you eat or do, but from what you keep quiet, endure, and carry. All these practices, separately, may seem small, but together they form a life change. They're not complicated. They don't cost money. They don't require you to lock yourself in a gym or follow an impossible diet. They just ask one thing: that you take control. Today, I not only have more stable blood pressure, I have a clearer mood, a lighter body, and above all, a peaceful conscience, knowing I did something for myself without waiting for damage to be irreversible. My life now is different. Today, when I get up in the morning, I no longer do it with fear. I don't have to sit on the edge of the bed waiting for dizziness to pass. I no longer hold on to hallway walls to avoid falling. I don't live counting hours between each crisis. That changed. Not because I found a miraculous cure, but because I made peace with my body and started listening to it. I walked in the park again, took care of my plants again, swept the yard, went to the market with my cloth bag like years ago. I started enjoying the little things again: the smell of toasted bread, the warmth of a cup in my hands, an unhurried chat. Those things that, when pressure is high, feel distant because the body is fighting and the mind is busy surviving. My friends, the few still close by, started noticing the change. One said to me the other day, "I see you more awake, like with a different light on your face. What are you doing?" And I didn't know where to start. It wasn't just the beetroot or the lemon water or the walks. It was everything. It was the decision not to let pressure define my days. Because when one resigns, one fades. But when one acts, even with small steps, life opens up again. Sometimes I think the most important thing wasn't what I ate, but what I stopped believing. I stopped believing it was too late. That old age was only a prelude to illness. I stopped thinking medications were my only salvation, and I began to believe in something else: my capacity for change. I didn't cure myself, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I didn't cure myself, but now my pressure no longer controls me. I don't feel like I'm about to collapse every time I climb stairs or get excited watching a movie. I no longer fear my heart failing in the middle of a conversation. I feel like I have the helm in my hands again, even if just for this stretch of the journey. And that, at this age, is an immense gift. I know many older people watching this are tired of feeling bad, of depending on pills, of going from appointment to appointment without answers. I was there, and that's why, with respect and humility, I want to tell you something. It is possible to improve. Not everything gets fixed, but a lot can change if you decide to change. Because there's no age to take control. There's no expiration date to start caring for yourself. The body is wise, and when it feels you treat it with kindness, it responds. Now, when I look back, I realize something I didn't understand when I was sick. Health isn't just the absence of illness. It's the freedom to live without fear, the freedom to make plans, to laugh without pressure in your chest, to walk without counting steps. And if that can be regained, even at this stage of life, then it's worth trying. Again and again, until you succeed. Tag. After everything I went through, one lesson stayed with me that I want to leave with you today. The smallest decision can have an immense impact. In my case, it was something as simple as starting to eat beetroot every day, a modest route, forgotten by many, that helped calm the storm inside my body. But beyond the food itself, the important thing was the will to change, to make a conscious, daily, sustained decision. It wasn't easy. At first, I doubted. I wondered if it would do any good, if it was too late. But I did it anyway, day after day. And little by little, my body showed me it was still willing to fight for me, as long as I fought for it too. So, if you're watching this video from your home, from a bed, from the couch where you spend most of your day, and you feel tired of pills, of fear, of the routine that makes you feel trapped in your body. Let me tell you this: you're not alone, and you're not condemned to live like this. Maybe you can't change everything, but you can change something. And sometimes that something is just what makes everything start turning in a new direction. It could be a food, a walk, a glass of water, a deep breath. The important thing is to start. Take the first step. Not perfect, not complete, just a step. Because waiting for the ideal moment doesn't work. Sometimes that moment never comes. And often, when it finally comes, it's after the scare, after the diagnosis, after something breaks. That's why if anything I shared today resonated with you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that you can still make decisions for yourself and by yourself, then my purpose with this video is fulfilled. Don't wait for another scare to start. Start today. And if you decide to try what helped me, I want to know. Tell me in the comments, will you dare to include beetroot in your daily life? What other habit do you think you could change starting today? Also, if this video gave you clarity, inspiration, or simply made you feel accompanied, share it with someone else. A child, a friend, a neighbor. Maybe they're also looking for a sign to start taking better care of themselves. Thank you for reaching this far. Thank you for listening to me. And above all, thank you for being willing to improve, because it's never too late to start again.